Hello. Thank you for joining me here again today as I continue to journey through some things that I've been wrestling with and using this as an avenue just to kind of get things off my chest. And I hope and pray that whoever watches this is able to take something away and, learn something or develop something that's going to help them as they continue to try to journey through whatever they're going through spiritually. And as all of us, one of the things that we're looking for as spiritual seekers is fellowship. And someone once described to me, they said, fellowship is this couple fellows hanging out in a ship. And, we're all in this together, and we're all journeying through life and trying to make sense of things. And sometimes it's easier to do it with a companion. And so I'm grateful to have this technology that's able to help me, get some things off my chest because this is how I process. Some people journal, I talk. and, uh, and so anybody who's watching this, I greatly appreciate your interest and your willingness to take a journey. And so today, the main thing I want to talk today about is a passage out of Matthew 5. I talked about this a little bit in the last vlog I did, but it's Matthew 5, verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And this has really taken on a new meaning for me in recent months, and now specifically in the last couple weeks. It's really been heavy on me. And so, tell a little bit of a backstory about how I came to this and what's going on, for those who might not be familiar. In 2017, I was, coming out of a particularly dark time. 2016 and late 2015 were pretty rough as far as me spiritually. God had really moved me through a process of what some people call deconstruction. I prefer to call it renovation. God came in and renovated some of my interior castle, as Teresa of Avila would call it. Moved some things around, got rid of some junk that didn't need to be there anymore, brought in some new pieces that were a little bit more in line with his concept of my design, not so much mine. But it was particularly lonely and particularly hard. Anybody who's gone through a spiritual deconstruction process knows that it's painful. And towards the end of 2017, I kind of started to come out of it a little bit. I was putting some things together. I was really kind of understanding who the God that I believed in was, but I still wasn't understanding who I was. And I was still wrestling with my identity. I was still wrestling with my calling, and I didn't know who I was or why I was here. And so, I went to a place called Beulah Beach, which is an important place. It's run by the Christian Missionary Alliance, but it's right on Lake Erie, right outside of Vermilion, Ohio. And it's very, very special and very unique. I think one of their slogans is something like, God doesn't speak louder here, but for some reason people tend to hear him better here. And it might not be the exact quote, but it's something to that effect. And that's been my experience at Beulah Beach. When I go there and I fast and retreat alone, I tend to hear God very clearly, and I tend to understand things a lot more clear than I typically would just sitting in my office doing my normal thing. And so in November of 2017, I took a retreat, a personal retreat up to Beulah Beach by myself. And, when I got there, I walked out onto this cliff overlooking Lake Erie, and I just simply said, God, who am I? And as clear as day, in the depth of my being, I could hear Christ in me, right? Christ in me responding, you are my son. And that solved the issue for me for that time. My identity is I'm God's son. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, no matter what happens to me, I'll never not be God's son. And that was sufficient for me for a while. But as I've continued to journey and continued to unpack things and continue to allow God to renovate certain aspects of my life, I started wondering, what does it mean to be God's son? And if I want people to recognize me as God's son, what is it that I need to be doing? And it wasn't until maybe a few months ago that it dawned on me. This passage, just one verse popped in my mind. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. So if I want to be God's son, and I want people to recognize me and see, and then look at me, when they see me, they say, yeah, that's God's son. I need to be a peacemaker. And that became really important in my mind as a concept. But what is a peacemaker? How do I go about being a peacemaker? I've just spent, many months working and lack of a better term, a Democratic Party operative, working really hard to get Democrats elected to various positions. And am I being a peacemaker if I've picked a side? If I'm saying I'm going to work for this political party, and I'm going to try to advance the agenda of this political party, regardless of the tactics, regardless of whatever else is going on, how am I being a peacemaker by picking a side between two sides that are at war with each other? And I can't make peace. I can't be a peacemaker between two parties if I'm in one of the parties. And that's just one example. We can look at our lives. All of us, we do pick sides. We pick sides in everything. There's a war going on between the Browns and the Steelers. And you're going to pick a side. You're either going to be a Browns fan or you're going to be a Steelers fan. But as long as you, and I know this is a silly one, but as long as you picked a side, you're not able to make peace between the Browns and the Steelers. Ohio State and Michigan. Whatever rivalry you want to think of, if you've picked a side, you're not able to be a peacemaker. Because you have an allegiance to one. And so I've recognized that if I want to be a peacemaker, I need to be on God's side. I need to be on His team. Because God's not a Steelers fan or a Browns fan. He's a football fan. And I don't think God really is a football fan, but you know what I mean. God's not a Republican or a Democrat. God doesn't love one party more than the other. He loves both equally. Both parties are His parties. Because they're made up of people who are His people. And so I started thinking, what does it mean to be a peacemaker? How do we go about making peace in a world that is so intent on war? And right now we have war, every possible war imaginable you can think of, we have going on right now. We have wars in our families. We have wars in our churches. We have wars in our sports teams. We have wars in our politics. We have wars between countries. There's a lot of war going on. And so as I began to wrestle with specifically this last week, really praying, God, what is a peacemaker? How do I go about being a peacemaker? Well, God's funny. So, as many of you know, Thomas Merton has played an important part of my life, and recently I got it's called A Year with Thomas Merton. It's a daily devotional from his journals. So every day you just read an excerpt from one of his journals, and I picked this up yesterday, and I read December 15th. So I'm recording this on December 16th. But on December 15th, this is the excerpt. The very first line. My responsibility is to be in all reality a peacemaker in the world, an apostle to bring people to truth, to make my whole life a true and effective witness to God's truth. All right, I submit. The very first line I read in that journal is, in all reality, I'm to be a peacemaker. I'm in. I'm sold out. I'm all on board. And so, as I've been reflecting and thinking about it, the main thing I've been thinking about is, why is there so much war? Why is there so much war going on in our world? And the thing that I realize is because there's so much war going on in ourselves. I mentioned all these external wars. Wars between countries, wars between political parties, wars in families, wars between churches. But what I didn't mention in that is the wars that are going on in ourselves. Not because a lot of us don't realize we're at war. We're at war with our thoughts. We're at war with our actions. We're at war with our pasts. We're at war with the lies that we've been told about ourselves. And so how are you ever, how is anybody ever going to be able to go out into the world and make peace if they're at war with themselves? Today, we have one commandment to follow. Love your neighbor as yourself. And anybody who's followed my teaching for any amount of time has heard me talk about that. I can't love my neighbor. I can't love you until I love me. The Apostle Paul says the law is summed up in one word in the commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. And for me, that one word isn't love. The one word is yourself. Because until I can learn to love me, I can't love you. Until I learn how to make peace with myself, until I learn how to make peace with my past, I make peace with my thoughts, my actions, the lies I've been told, until I'm able to make peace inside of me, I will never be able to make peace in the world. Until I end the internal wars, I will never be able to be a part of any movement that ends the exterior wars. The wars that go on in our world. All of us, to some degree, are at war with ourselves. So if we want to be peacemakers, if we want to go into the world making peace, if we want to be sons and daughters of God, we have to end the war with ourselves. Ask the questions. Where do I need to make peace with me? Because just as I can't love my neighbor as myself if I don't love myself, I can't make peace with my neighbor if I don't have peace with me. So the first step in becoming a peacemaker is making peace with me. Any movement of God will always start internally and work its way out. You will never get self-love and self-validation from other people. The only way to get validated is for you to find your validation inside of you. No matter how many people give you praise and give you accolades, you're never going to feel that validation. You're never going to feel that contentment unless you have it here first. All movements of God start from the inside and move out, because where is God? He is in you, the hope of glory. Christ is in you, and He always has been, and He always will be. Until you can make peace with Christ's presence inside of you, how are you ever going to make peace with Christ's presence inside of someone else? Last week, when I recorded this video, I talked about the idea of Haietas from Scotus, Duns Scotus. And, I learned about this concept from a guy named Daniel Horan. He's a Franciscan friar, a young guy. If you're not familiar with the work of Daniel Horan, look him up, Horan, Daniel Horan. I was fortunate enough to get to meet him a few years ago, Baldwin Wallace, and was able to spend some quality one-on-one time with him. He will be our generation's Richard Rohr, right? 20, 30 years from now, he will be the Richard Rohr of that time. That's who he is. And so I heard him do this lecture on Duns Scotus and the idea of Haechetas, and now reflecting on that, and now putting this idea of peace together. Until I am at peace with my thisness, until I'm at peace with my Haechetas, until I find which all of that is Christ. Christ is in me, and he's uniquely in me. And he's in me not in a way that he's not in you, but what he's doing in me is unique and it's special, and it's his image of me that he's trying to get me to live out. And until I make peace with that, I'll never be able to make peace in the world. And for me specifically, God has called me to be a peacemaker, because God calls me his son. God told me I am his son. And if I want to be called God's son, I have to be a peacemaker. And the first step for any of us in this process is to make peace with us, to make peace with our Haechetas. And so, to wrap this all up, who are you and why are you here? And have you made peace with who you are and why you're here? And if you haven't, let's take a journey. Let's figure this out. Let's find a way that we can begin to live out of Christ's presence in our life. Let's find a way that we can get in touch with our Haechetas, our thisness, that we can become peacemakers. Because it's all going to start here. It's all going to start on the inside. Are you at peace with who you are? Have you come to grips with your past? I hope to. I want to. And I hope you can too. Let's take this journey. Let's take it together. Amen.